energy of his own. Like Shedeur has been the same person since he stepped foot in Cleveland. Like there's nothing changed about him. He's always the happy-go-lucky person that's in the locker room, always shaking people's hands, making jokes and stuff.
The story is falling apart right in front of us, and the people who spent months spreading lies and ruining Shedeur Sanders' reputation are watching their carefully crafted lies fall apart in real time. Alex Wright, a defensive lineman for the Cleveland Browns, just stepped up to a microphone and gave what might be the most important testimony we've heard all season. It completely destroyed every lie the media has been spreading about Sanders since before he was even drafted. This isn't a carefully planned public relations stunt or a teammate being forced to say nice things for the cameras. This is real praise from someone who sees Shedeur Sanders every day in the building, watches how he prepares, and sees how he interacts with his teammates. This person is now telling the world that everything you've heard about this young quarterback is completely and totally wrong. Alex Wright didn't hold back, didn't make things sound better than they were, and didn't leave any room for doubt. He drew a picture of a quarterback who is nothing like the bad things that have been said about him in the past year. Wright says that Sanders is the friendly, happy person in the locker room who is always shaking hands, telling jokes, and keeping the mood upbeat. But when it's time to put on the pads and helmet and get to work on winning football games, Sanders becomes a completely focused professional who takes his job seriously and puts in the time needed to be great. This is the kind of quarterback you want to run your team. Someone who can be a good teammate and keep things light while also putting in the hard work and dedication needed to be successful in the highest level of professional football. Wright didn't stop there, though. This is where things get very interesting and very bad for all the journalists and analysts who have been spreading false information. Wright said that every morning when he came into the building, he saw Shedeur Sanders already in the office with the quarterback's coach. They were studying film, breaking down defenses, asking questions, and doing the detailed preparation work that makes great quarterbacks stand out from good ones. Wright said that he is observant and doesn't talk much in the mornings because he isn't a morning person. But even if he keeps his head down and goes about his business, he can't help but notice that Sanders is always putting in extra work. This is a rookie quarterback who isn't just going to meetings and practices that he has to go to. He's coming in early, staying late, and using every free minute to improve his skills and learn the offensive system. It's especially important that Sanders isn't afraid to ask questions, because it shows how smart and humble he is. To ask questions, you have to be willing to admit what you don't know, be open to getting help and advice, and put learning and getting better ahead of protecting your ego. Sanders is a good quarterback because he always asks questions and tries to understand things instead of acting like he knows everything. This shows that he has a growth mindset and is willing to learn. This goes against what people were saying before the draft about Sanders being cocky, thinking he already knows everything and not wanting to put in the effort to learn and get better in the NFL. Wright is saying that the story was completely wrong, that Sanders is the opposite of what they said, and that anyone who spent time with him would know right away that those claims were false. Wright also showed a lot of maturity and perspective when he talked about Sanders as a rookie quarterback. He said that mistakes, missed assignments, and missed chances are all part of football, especially for a first-year player who is learning a new system and getting used to the speed and complexity of the NFL game. Wright, on the other hand, stressed that the most important thing is to be able to move on from those mistakes and play the next play with confidence and focus. This is the kind of thinking that great quarterbacks have. They have a short memory that lets them get back on track after a setback without letting past mistakes affect how well they do now. Wright says that Sanders has a lot of that quality, the ability to keep going and stay calm no matter what happened on the last play or series. Wright's last statement was strong and clear. He said that the team is going to support Sanders and help him be himself, and that he personally loves Sanders and wants him to succeed just like everyone else on the team does. This teammate is saying the best things possible about his quarterback, which shows that the locker room respects Sanders, believes in him, and wants him to do well. This completely destroys the story that was going around about Sanders being a diva in the locker room, being too cool for his teammates, not fitting in with the organization, or being someone that other players hated or didn't want to play with. Wright is telling us straight up that Sanders is well liked in that locker room, that people really like being around him and want him to do well. People who have been defending Sanders all along, and fans of Wright's comments, have reacted exactly how you would expect them to. People are saying that they don't like seeing good things said about Sanders because it goes against the bad things they've been trying to spread. People are happy that Sanders' real teammates, the people who know him best and see him every day, have only good things to say about his character, work ethic, preparation habits, and leadership skills. One comment perfectly summed up how frustrated many people are. The media made everyone think Sanders was a locker room problem and too cool for his teammates just because he was confident and wore chains.
When you really think about it, that's pretty crazy. There was no real proof of Shedeur Sanders being a bad teammate or leader. The whole case against him was based on shallow observations about his style, confidence, and famous father. Another person brought up the Brian Daboll case, which was one of the most blatant examples of making up stories during the pre-draft process. Daboll, who is no longer an NFL head coach, said that Sanders came to a pre-draft meeting unprepared and made a bad impression. Many news outlets reported this story as true and used it as proof that Sanders wasn't serious about football and didn't have the work ethic to make it in the pros. But as many people said back then and are saying again now, he has had Hall of Fame level coaching and mentorship his whole life, and he knows the importance of preparation and professionalism better than most players will ever understand it. It is funny to think that he would show up to a meeting with a possible future employer unprepared. This says a lot more about Daboll's credibility and judgment than it does about Sanders. The comments about the media trying to railroad Sanders and tear him down are completely true and should be taken more seriously. What happened to Shedeur Sanders during the draft process and his first season as a rookie was a planned attack on his character that went far beyond normal draft analysis or real worries about his game. This was a personal matter. This was done on purpose to hurt his reputation and make people doubt his ability to succeed in the NFL. Some media people in Cleveland were pushing for backup Dillon Gabriel to get more playing time than Sanders, even though Sanders was doing well. This shows how much some people wanted him to fail instead of succeed. That kind of biased and agenda-driven coverage is harmful and dangerous, and it's one of the reasons why so many fans don't trust traditional sports media anymore. The part with Damon Woody and his co-host do a great job of showing how silly Kevin Stefanski's choices about Sanders have been. Woody said that even though the two teams were losing, the game was still fun to watch, and a big part of that was seeing Sanders throw the ball all over the field and make plays. When your quarterback is in that kind of rhythm and groove, throwing the ball and moving the offense well, the last thing you should do is take him out of the game to run some wildcat or trick play. Woody said it was a fireball offense that should be thrown away, and he's totally right about that. The wildcat formation worked for a short time in the NFL over 10 years ago because teams weren't ready for it and didn't know how to defend it. But this is 2024, almost 2025. Wildcat formations are something that every defensive coordinator in the league has seen hundreds of times. No one is falling for it anymore, especially not when it really matters and everyone knows a trick play is coming. Woody made the important point that Sanders needs to be able to play well in goal line situations, that taking him out of the game during those times is bad for his growth and keeps him from getting the experience he needs to become a great NFL quarterback. It's not just about one game or one play. This is about building confidence and setting patterns. Taking your quarterback out of the game in the most important situations over and over again shows that you don't trust him, and that message affects his confidence, his growth, and his relationship with the coaches. Stefanski has made this mistake several times this season, which shows that it's not just a one-time mistake, but a pattern of decision-making that points to bigger problems with how the team sees and handles their young quarterback. The other host made a great point about how pulling a quarterback out for a wildcat play when he's playing well would mess up his groove and rhythm. Anyone who has ever played sports at any level knows this is basic coaching psychology. You should keep giving a player chances when they're hot, when they're feeling it and making plays. You don't break that flow to try a trick play that probably won't work. It's very worrying that Stefanski either doesn't understand this basic rule or chooses to ignore it for some reason. This makes people wonder if he's the right person to be developing a young quarterback for the franchise. Woody ended by saying that the city of Cleveland should definitely be mad at Stefanski for this choice,
and that is a completely fair and reasonable judgment based on what we've seen. When you really think about it, the statistical breakdown given by another analyst is mind-blowing. Shedeur Sanders was the first Browns quarterback to throw for more than 300 yards, throw 3 touchdown passes, and score a rushing touchdown in the same game since 1950, which is 74 years ago. He is only the 7th rookie in the history of the Super Bowl to throw for 360 yards and score 4 touchdowns in the same game. Some of the best quarterbacks of this generation are in the same company as him with that achievement. Names like Andrew Luck, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Marcus Mariota, and C.J. Stroud. These are franchise quarterbacks, which means they were the faces of their teams and led them to long-term success. Stefanski's answer, though, was to take Sanders out of the game when it was on the line, even though he had just put on a historic performance and joined that elite group. The analyst brought up another important point that hasn't been talked about enough since the game. If you're down 14 points and score a touchdown, why would you want to go for 2 points? The math doesn't make any sense at all. If you kick the extra point, you're down by 7. You kick another extra point after your second touchdown, and the game is tied.
It's easy and clear. There's no need to make things harder or chase points. Stefanski chose to go for 2 after the first touchdown. This meant that they had to make a 2-point conversion on the second score just to tie the game. This put too much pressure on the players and made things too hard when a simple extra point would have sent the game to overtime. Even if you decide to go for 2, which is a risky move, at least you gave the ball to your best player, Shedeur Sanders, who had just led 2 touchdown drives in a row and was playing the best football of his young career. The analyst shared something interesting about how he tried to figure out why Stefanski made the decisions he did. He called 2 people who have been NFL head coaches. These are people who know the game inside and out and have made decisions like this under a lot of stress. Even former coaches who spoke off the record and tried to be diplomatic and politically correct couldn't explain what Stefanski did in a way that made sense. If people who know a lot about football and have been in your exact situation can't explain or defend your choices, that tells you everything you need to know about how bad those choices were. This wasn't a case of people with different ideas about how to manage the game or disagreeing about strategy. Everyone agreed that this was bad coaching that didn't make any sense. The conversation then turned to something that needs to be said loudly and clearly, even though it's uncomfortable and controversial. The analyst said that Stefanski and the Browns didn't want Sanders to start from the beginning of the season because they knew exactly what would happen when he got on the field and people saw how good he was. They knew that Sanders would show that he's a real franchise quarterback who should be the unquestioned starter and face of the organization once he got some practice with the starting offense, built chemistry with his receivers, and got used to the system. And if that happened, it would make people very uncomfortable because they would have to ask why they didn't start him from the beginning, why they wasted valuable time developing him, and why they ever doubted him in the first place. This theory, while a little conspiratorial, makes more sense than any other reason for the constant undermining of Sanders and the refusal to fully support him as the starter. The analyst also made the important point that this is the NFL in 2024, not college football, and wildcat formations and trick plays just don't work at this level anymore. The comparison to the 2007 Miami Dolphins running wildcat with Ronnie Brown is helpful, because it worked well for them because their quarterback situation was bad and defenses weren't ready for it. You don't run wildcat, though, when your quarterback is playing really well and giving you everything you could want from the position. From a football point of view, that makes no sense at all. When you don't have a real quarterback or your normal offense isn't working, you use the wildcat to confuse the other team. In the case of the Browns, neither of those things are true, which makes the choice to use it at that crucial time even more confusing and wrong. The analyst was right to point out Sanders' one big mistake in the game, which was throwing the ball up in the middle of the field when he didn't need to force anything. They did this while praising everything else Sanders did. That pick was a bad choice. The kind of mistake that young quarterbacks make when they feel like they have to do something even though they're already playing well and don't need to take risks. But you shouldn't lose faith in your quarterback or take him out in important situations just because he made one bad decision in an otherwise great game. That's a chance to learn. You talk about this in film study and help him learn from it,
not a reason to bench him when the game is on the line.
What matters is how Sanders reacted to that mistake. He quickly bounced back and led 2 touchdown drives, which shows the mental toughness and resilience that great quarterbacks have. Talking about specific throws that Sanders made shows that he has an elite arm and touch that can't be learned. The deep pass fell perfectly into the bucket. The 60-yard pass to Jerry Jeudy was the same idea he missed the week before, but this time he nailed it. The touch pass to Njoku while he was on the move also shows that he is a quarterback who knows more than just how to throw the ball and how to run the system. These are the kinds of throws that show the difference between a real franchise quarterback and a guy who is just okay or needs a certain system to work. When a talented quarterback has time to build relationships and timing with his weapons, like Sanders does with receivers like Cedric Tillman, who makes plays every week, it shows. Tillman makes contested catches and important plays on film every week, and that's not just a coincidence. Sanders and his receivers worked hard and built trust, which is why that happened. The last rant about how the Browns tried to keep Sanders down and how the media tried to convince everyone that Dillon Gabriel was somehow better than him perfectly sums up how crazy things have been for the past few months. During training camp, people talked about Gabriel as if he were a supercomputer. The ideas that he should be starting instead of Sanders. The constant questioning of whether Sanders was really the right guy, even though he had better college stats and was picked higher in the draft. All of it was meant to make people doubt Sanders as the franchise quarterback and make them less sure of him. And now that Sanders has shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's the real deal by putting up record-breaking numbers and showing franchise quarterback skills, the people who spread those false stories look stupid and are mad that they were caught. Alex Wright's decision to be honest about what he sees every day at the Browns facility is very important and should not be downplayed. He gave inside testimony that goes against months of false stories and media speculation. He showed us who Shedeur Sanders really is. Not the caricature that people with agendas or biases made of him, but the real person who shows up every day, works harder than he has to, treats his teammates with respect, stays positive, and acts like a professional. That testimony is much more important than anything a journalist who has never met Sanders could say. And it should make everyone who spread false stories think about their views again and admit they were wrong. The bigger question that comes up from all of this is why there was such a coordinated effort to bring Shedeur Sanders down in the first place. Why did so many people in the media and NFL want to make this quarterback look bad and hope he fails? The uncomfortable truth is that Sanders was looked at and criticized in a way that went far beyond what is normal for draft analysis and rookie evaluation. People expected more from him than they did from other quarterback prospects. In his case, there was no benefit of the doubt given to other players, and people were much more willing to believe negative reports and characterizations that weren't backed up by evidence. Some of this is because of his famous father and the mixed feelings people have about Deion Sanders and how he coaches and promotes himself. Part of it might have to do with the fact that Shedeur played at Colorado, which isn't a traditional football power and doesn't have the built-in credibility that comes from playing at Alabama or Ohio State. And some of it, even though a lot of people don't want to admit it, probably has to do with bigger issues like race, style, confidence, and how young black quarterbacks are seen and judged compared to white quarterbacks. When a young black quarterback who wears chains and has swagger and personality shows the same self-confidence that would be praised as leadership in a white quarterback, it is seen as arrogance and a flaw in his character. That double standard is real. It's everywhere, and it definitely changed how Shedeur Sanders was looked at and talked about during this whole process. But here's the great thing about sports, especially the quarterback position. Eventually, the way a team plays on the field becomes too obvious to ignore, spin, or explain away. Eventually, the tape is so loud that even the most biased people have to admit that it is true. Right now, Shedeur Sanders is making that happen. It's impossible for anyone who is acting in good faith to keep asking if he's the real deal or if he should be the Browns' franchise quarterback going forward. 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, record-breaking stats, clutch performance under pressure, leadership skills, endorsements from teammates, and consistent preparation.
All of this adds up to a strong case that Sanders is precisely what the Browns require and should be staying around for the next 10 years.